The Federal Register for the Environmental Legal Research course at Boston College Law School. The Federal Register is the daily record of the executive branch of the federal government. It's published each business day. Each volume covers one calendar year, so the page numbers get very large toward the end of the year. It's still available in print, but most people tend to use it in one of its electronic forms. The complete Federal Register, back to March 1936, is available on govinfo.gov, Lexis, Westlaw, Bloomberg Law, and Hein Online, but my favorite version is at federalregister.gov. The landing page not only provides a quick link to today's Federal Register, it also provides advance notice of what will be in upcoming Federal Registers in the public inspection section. One of the most important functions of the Federal Register is to serve as the vehicle for federal rulemaking. Under the Administrative Procedures Act, rulemaking begins with a public notice in the Federal Register. Sometimes an agency will solicit public input even before drafting a proposed rule, but most of the time the notice is accompanied by a published proposed rule. One feature that makes federalregister.gov so useful is its interactive table of contents that makes it easier to navigate long Federal Register documents. One of the things that accompanies the proposed rule is the agency's rationale in drafting the rules. The proposed rules are required to be accompanied by information about how the public may comment on them. Some major rulemaking activities are accompanied by public hearings, but the primary method by which we, as members of the public, can comment on proposed rules is in writing. Today, you can easily comment on proposed rules at federalregister.gov or the regulations.gov website, where you can see comments left by others. After taking into account the comments, the agency can then publish a final rule in the Federal Register. The final rule will include the agency's response to the comments it received. It will also include the text of the new regulation as it will appear in the next revision of the CFR. To find the history of a regulation, you just reverse the process. Start with the current regulation. Find the source statement, that is, the statement of where the final rule was published in the Federal Register. There's often a source statement for the whole CFR part, which applies to those sections that don't have a separate source statement, like 36 CFR Section 1.1. Sometimes an individual section within a part will not have the same source as the part as a whole. This is what a section in the print CFR looks like with a separate source statement. The source statement for 36 CFR Section 1.2 isn't labeled, but it appears in square brackets. Lexis calls these source statements history. This is an example of the history of 36 CFR Section 1.1 on Lexis. And this example is what the history of 36 CFR Section 1.2 looks like on Lexis. Westlaw calls them sources, and this is what the source of 36 CFR Section 1.1 looks like on Westlaw. Some of the source statements on Westlaw are a little more confusing. Here is the Westlaw source statement for 36 CFR Section 1.2. Under the heading Credits, Westlaw has printed both the source statement for the whole part and the separate source statement for the individual section. It can be confusing because the one that applies to this section is the one in parentheses. The one that includes the words "unless otherwise noted" is the one for the whole part, which has been outlined in blue. The one outlined in red is the one for just this section. This section was most recently amended on December 5th, 2024. The final rule itself was published at 89 Federal Register, page number 96,550. I told you those page numbers get pretty large. Going to that page in the Federal Register, we see the actual change that was made to 36 CFR Section 1.2 by this final rule. At the top of the page, in the final rule, we see that it was published in the December 5th, 2024 Federal Register and has an effective date approximately 1 month later on January 6th, 2025. The final rule as published in the Federal Register contains a section-by-section analysis of the changes. And it also has a section that explains how the agency responded to the comments it received. So if you're trying to figure out why this section was written the way it was, one thing to do is read the agency response to comments. Agencies usually summarize the comments and explain what, if any, effect these comments had on the way the rules were drafted. The other thing that every set of final rules will have in it is a statement of where the proposed rules have been published, which in this case is 89 Federal Register 48,485. Don't you love these page numbers? One recent improvement to the website is the quick links at the top of the final rule to the proposed rule, and a link at the top of the proposed rule to the final rule. Here in the proposed rule, we can read the rules as drafted by the agency and a statement of the agency's original intent in drafting these rules. We can also link to the comments that were submitted on this rulemaking at regulations.gov. It really is important for all of us to be involved in shaping the regulations we live under, and given that legally we all have constructive notice of what was published in the Federal Register, you really should read the Federal Register every day. Just kidding.